stuff. Buttonses. So we want each new LI to have a few buttons. So we could, inside render list item, also make a bunch of buttons. That's kind of a pain in the neck. Plus, I want to show you something. So that's not how I'm going to do it. I'd really like to be able to just write some dang HTML, because that's much, much easier. So first, if for no other reason than the sake of styling, I want to make kind of a sample LI. Put it in my list and kind of use it as the basis for all the others. Because otherwise, every time I refresh the page, my array is going to get blown away. The list is going to start all over, and I'll have to add a new one before I can change the style again. That's super inconvenient. So let's go down to Flick List Town. And put in a list item. And I'd like some way to identify these list items apart from all the other list items that may be on the page. Not that uncommon an element, so I'm going to give them a class of Flick, just to make it clear that that's what each of these LIs represents. Now, why did I use a class instead of an ID? How many of these LIs are there going to be in the page? As many Flicks as I have, right? So it could be 10 of them. So I don't want to give them an ID because that's not unique. But a class is good. Class Flick. And inside there, we're going to have the Flick name, right? I'll just put a placeholder in there for now. And we're going to have our buttons. I would anticipate wanting to kind of style these separately from the name, so I'm going to go ahead and put them inside some sort of container. So I'm going to make a span. I'm going to call it actions. I give it a class of actions, because that's what these represent. These are all the actions you can take on any given Flick. And then I'll put my fave button and my delete button. I'll go ahead and do both of those. Now you may remember in Foundation, you can give a button a class of button and it'll, do some styling at least. Those will be my fave. Button. I'll say delete. I also need to be able to identify these for the sake of attaching event listeners at some point, right? So I want to be able to identify them uniquely too. So I will give this a class of fave and this a class of remove. So I can tell one button from the other, at least within this one Flick. How's that look? Gorgeous. That's slightly hideous. Let's see if we can make it a tad better. So Foundation had a bunch of styles for buttons, I recall. Those were under controls, I think. Button group. Button group. Sounds like what this is. They're containers for related action items. They're great when you need to display a group of actions in a bar. Ooh, that sounds neat. Add the button group class to a container, and inside it, place any number of buttons. Don't mind if I do. Oh, they're already in a container. If I just add the class button group. Well, it changed all right. It didn't really put them where I want them, but it grouped them together. Quick side note. So yesterday, in the middle of the morning class, there was a new version of Foundation released. And so the documentation has been updated, but we used the CDN link from PersonStat. So change this from 6.3.1 to 6.4.0 so that the documentation won't lie to us. And when the documentation lies to you, I lie to you, and I do not want to break your hearts. So we're going to use the new stuff, the good stuff. So, what else does it say? Ooh, button groups. These build off the button styles and worked perfectly with the grid. The grid, remember that? We used that yesterday with our medium 8 cell and all that business. Well, what if we started a whole new grid inside the LI so that we could position the name of the thing in the button group using the grid? That could be neat. So first of all, we should probably put the name of the thing in its own element. For one thing right now, what if we said LI text content and set it to something else? Text content replaces everything. So the buttons are going to get blown away if we do that. So we need a more specific target for that. So yeah, let's just wrap this in a span. I'll give it a class of flick name, because that's the kind of thing this is. Cool. That'll help. Also, the bullets are not working for me. Yeah, Alex? So a span, like a div, is kind of a semantically meaningless element. Spans and divs don't mean anything, but div is a block element, i.e. something that takes up an entire line and has a line break after it. A span is an inline element, like EM or strong or a link or something like that. So it's not going to put line breaks around it, but it's meaningless, so it just makes a good target for CSS and JavaScript. It doesn't have any inherent meaning or any default style. Don't like the bullets. So let's see. General. Typography. Helper classes. Maybe there'll be something there for us. Unbulleted list. What do you know? Almost like I knew it was there. You can add the class noBullet to remove the bullets and numbers respectively in a UL or an OL. So on my UL up here, I will just add a class of no-bullet. Not that it's hard to write that CSS yourself, but they did it for us. No more bullets. But I want these to be beside that, don't I? This looks silly. So again, we'll see if we can use the grid to help us out here. So that was under General, XY Grid, which is new. Yeah, really, really new. So we saw yesterday and used the class GridX to basically tell us, hey, inside here, this is a grid. So I want to start a new grid with each new LI. So on the LI itself, I'm going to add the class GridX. And then we could do like the medium 8 kind of thing that we did yesterday if we knew like what proportion we wanted it to do. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I wish were easy. I want the buttons to take up however much space the buttons take up, right? Because they're not going to be 2 buttons forever, so I don't know exactly how wide they should be. And then I want the name to just take up the rest of it, however much that is. That's what I really want it to do. Let's see if there's a way. Looks like if we just put a class of cell, that'll be a full width cell. We know that if we put something like small 6, that'll take up 6. There's auto sizing. See what that does for us. So if the class auto is added to the cell, it will take up the remaining space. So that's exactly what we want to do to the name, right? We want it to take up the remaining space. But remaining after what? Let's go ahead and do it. So both of these should be cells, both of the spans, that is. So that makes them part of this grid system. So put a cell there, put a cell there. Does anything change? Not really. I want this one to be auto-sized, we said. I want it to take up however much space is left. Okay, now they're one on top of each other. Neat. Looks like there's some new sections here. Flexbox utilities. What does that do? Is that where this is? I suspect that's where this is. It probably isn't. Let's see. General XY grid. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, this is our section on auto sizing. It was right after that. So auto added to the cell, take up the remaining space. The cell can also be made to shrink by adding the shrink class. This means it will only take up the space its contents need. So if I put shrink on the button group, maybe it'll only be as wide as it needs to be, and with auto, the name will take up the whole rest of the LI. Yep. Beautiful. Now, what ticks me off is that this is at the top. I want it to be centered with these buttons. Vertical alignment in CSS has historically been an unbelievable pain in the neck, and the workarounds are really silly. But with Flexbox, it's super easy. And we could just use Flexbox and style it manually, but Foundation gives us these Flexbox utilities, so we can just put certain classes on and it'll just do it. Horizontal alignment, well, that's easy anyway. Vertical alignment, align middle. So I want both of these things to be aligned vertically in the middle. So if on my grid itself, I add the class align middle, it did something. It moved it all right. Oh yeah, look, here's the LI. It's taking up all that space. The rock is dead center. The other thing kind of looks like it isn't. So see, that's all blue. Here I got some orange business underneath. If you look at the CSS styles over here and you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see the CSS box model, which shows you the element itself, any padding, any border, and any margin. Margin. 16 pixels bottom margin on that button group. That's screwing us up. By the way, worth pointing out, padding is inside the border, margin is outside the border. Kind of makes sense. You add padding inside the thing, but margin is the space between things. So this has some margin border that's ticking me off. So in my style sheet, I'm going to say, I want to remove that margin border, not necessarily from every button group, because maybe at some point that would be a good thing, the margin that it adds. But for the button group inside each flick, I don't want that crap. So if I say dot flick, that would apply to each of my LIs, right? And a descendant from that, if I have a button group inside there, I want a margin bottom of 0. Now, that's right in the center. Excellent. Now, looks like the list itself has some bottom margin. See that? And that looks terrible. When we added that no bullet class, maybe? Oh no, foundation just on all ULs adds a bottom margin of 1 rem. Well, no thanks. So we can let it do it to other ULs, that's fine. But for our flick list, no. So let's say I'll put it above the specific flick, just to kind of group this logically. Flick list, margin bottom, 0.
So you put a hash instead of a dot. Why the difference?
This is an ID. This is a class. So classes are dot, IDs are hash. Okay. ID hash class dot. That's pretty good. Looks like this hugging the left there is kind of silly looking. So that is the flick name span, right? Span with a class of flick name. So let's say dot flick name. Whoops. We can make that padding instead of margin, I suppose. Let's make padding not just left, but also right, probably. If it is that long, I don't want it smashed right up against the buttons. So I could do padding left and padding right. But you can also use the shorthand padding and specify all of them at once. In which case, you go top, right, bottom, left in that order. Top, right, bottom, left. Always the case with padding and margin and border. Those are the order. That's the order. Now, if I said like padding 1M and that was all I put in there, then that would apply to all sides. Top and bottom, I don't care. 0's fine. Right and left, let's go with half a rem. Looks pretty good to me. 0.75 maybe. Better. Okay. Another note. Oh yes, I want the left and right to be the same. If you want the top and bottom and left and right to be the same, you can just do this. And the first number will be top and bottom. This will be left and right. If we want to prove it, let's inspect this LI, and specifically the span. And you see the green on both the left and the right? So we see that padding is there both places. Excellent. The more I think about it, the more I think it should be margin. We'll leave it. I can't tell you why, because that would be giving you a hint. But I like that better. Looks like there's a little space here at the bottom, but not the top. Wonder why that is. Is that these gosh darn buttons or something? Yep. Margin bottom 1 pixel on these. On the button group, on a button within a button group. So notice this. It is the class button inside the class button group that this rule applies to. So whatever my rule is, I need to make sure it overrides that one. Why? I don't know. It's supposed to be a button bar that, I don't know, hugs the top of the screen. I'm not really sure why. But I don't approve. So we already have one for the button group that's inside the flick. Let's say inside the flick, inside the button group, something with a class of button should have a Margin bottom. Or was it margin or border? It was margin, right? Yeah. Should have a bottom margin of a whole lot of nothing.
So you want to keep the right-left margin?
Well, there isn't one on the right. Yeah, there's one between them. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with a little space between them. We could always change our mind. Cool. But they could be different colors. Delete should probably be red. You may remember that in the controls button section, coloring, yeah, we have these. I like alert for delete. I kind of like warning for fave. Or, wait, hold that thought. Where do we go? There we go. Remove button. Let's also add alert on there. That should make it red. Yep. Oh yeah, I didn't even need to refresh. Throw a warning on fave. That's orange, one of Michael Bay's 2 favorite colors. He'd be proud. Red, the color of his Ferrari, he'd approve. Cool. I'd say that's looking quite a bit better. So I'm going to put this in here. Add sort of a placeholder flick. Add and style placeholder flick. You know what? I kind of want this flick to be a template for my other flicks. I'll call it the template. Add and style flick template.
So I noticed you don't like actually make them full sentences or anything, like you don't put punctuation in, or is that?
They are complete sentences except for the lack of punctuation at the end. Yep, they are full imperative sentences without punctuation because that is what the GitHub style guide uses. And just because it's easier than writing our own style guide, that's what we use because a whole lot of people do now. Consistency is the most important part of that. So why did I even make this thing? Well, partially so I could style it more easily. And partially because I don't want to build these things from scratch. I want to copy this one.